When we're ready to put somebody into coordinated entry, we'll go ahead and search for them under Find Client. I'm using Travis Tritt here. He is the client that we just enrolled in the family shelter in the prior video. And so the good thing is that most of that information you'll be able to just pull forward for your coordinated entry enrollment. But we first need to determine if he's already in coordinated entry. So I'm gonna hit search. There's Travis, clicking on his record. We get to his dashboard and we can see that he is not open in coordinated entry. He doesn't have a coordinated entry enrollment showing up under active here. And also you see he's got a Dream Center Village, PSH in real life. He would not be open in both the shelter and the village. You would most likely just see him open in the shelter. So we know that he is not in coordinated entry, so we're going to proceed with putting him in. To do a coordinated entry enrollment, we need to go to the coordinated entry icon. We do not want to do it under the intake button because the coordinated entry workflow pulls in a few other fields, and those can only be captured in this coordinated entry workspace. So I'll click on that. I'll next go to Find Program. And here we're going to choose which coordinated entry project we want to put the household in. If it's a single person and they're not going to have anybody else joining them in housing, you'd use individuals. If it is a household of two or more, even if the other person is not with them right now, if it's a kid, if they'll have the kid at least 50% of the time in housing, you'll go ahead and use coordinated entry families. If it's two friends or grandparent, grandchild, regardless of the relationship, if it's two or more people, use coordinated entry families. And again, the other person or people do not have to be with the client at that exact moment. So in this case, we're going to say it's Travis Tritt and one of his kids that would be uh, uh, going into housing. And so we'll choose coordinated entry families. Once you click on that, move over here into this middle column again and hit triage assessment. That's like the intake button for coordinated entry. So I'll click on triage assessment. And then we're just going to find that client so that we can link onto their existing record and not create a duplicate. So I'm just going to do a partial name search, hit next. You'll get this flashing yellow, and that's just alerting you that there's already a record in the system that is spelled similarly, and that's Travis Tritt. That's the client we want to link up with. So we will click on that. All right, then we get this family members page. If there's anybody else who could possibly be enrolled, go ahead and add them in here, but we already put in Ronald. We're going to say Carrie and Bob are no longer part of the picture, but it doesn't hurt anything to have them on this page. We just want to make sure that anyone who is going to be joining the household in the actual enrollment is reflected here. So both Travis and Ronald are here, so we're good. So I'll hit save and close. And you see here, the project is already populated with what we selected earlier for coordinated entry families. So you don't have to do anything up there, but you will check the household members who would be getting housed through coordinated entry if they got pulled. So I'm clicking on Travis and Ronald. I'm going to use today's date. I'm saying that this is the day we're assessing them. If you assessed them 2 days ago, then you would just backdate to that date. Our relationship to head of household looks good. Travis is self, Ronald is son, so we'll hit save. And then we're going to start cycling through the workflow. So all of this should be identical to what you had in the shelter. Once you put the contact information in, it will be retained until you change it again. I will add a email address here, but the key when you're approaching the contact area is just as many points of contact as possible, because if they get pulled and somebody can't get a hold of them, then they get returned to the list. So we just want to have as many points of contact as possible and just let them know that uh, anytime their contact info changes, to let you know that, so that you can update it. And then this is also reflected in the coordinated entry guidance that will be accompanying this video. There's a document that's about 2 or 3 pages, but it covers how you also don't want to let 90 days go by where you're not in contact with somebody who enters into coordinated entry, because after 90 days of no contact, you get exited from coordinated entry. Now, if you reappear, you can be put back in. So as long as you're active in a shelter, that counts as contact. But let's say you leave a shelter, but you're still experiencing homelessness. You're either outdoors, in a place not meant for habitation, in a shelter, or you could be couch surfing and actively fleeing domestic violence or other danger. In that case, if they're not in a HMIS entering program like Pathway Ministries, that they enter into their own system, it would be good for that client to call 211 or 309-999-4029 in order to have a case note added that they're still in a homeless situation. So again, 90 days no contact. That is kind of the cutoff point for where you get exited uh, as just unknown, disappeared. And then again, they want to stay in contact with HMIS entering organizations so that contact information can be updated if it changes at all. And I'm also going to put in here for the work phone, even though it's not technically a work phone, I'm going to put the Salvation Army's number as just another backup. You can disregard the category names or the field names here. These are, just think of them as phone number spaces. And if you run out of space, like if you have a number for like a friend or family member who's a good backup contact, and you can't fit it in here, just add a case note uh, to say, additional CE contact information for client. All right, so we'll keep scrolling down. We're going to use that same release. You can use the same release for your shelter to apply to coordinated entry. So we're just going to keep that as is. And then we're going to say this person is in Peoria County right now, and they're open to being housed in any of the 4 counties that our continuum of care covers. And then you can skip over the zip code. You don't need that for coordinated entry. So we'll hit finish there. Okay, so we get to this universal data element page. We'll say he does have a disabling condition as he reported at entry. And for coordinated entry, especially, even if they don't have documentation of a disability, if all of the evidence or just your experience points to them experiencing some sort of a disabling condition, anxiety, PTSD, depression, and then distinct categories like chronic health condition, uh, substance use conditions, alcohol use, um, physical health, HIV/AIDS, developmental disability, any of that, you put a yes here for disabling condition, and then on the form coming up, you can specify which types of disabling conditions. For prior living situation, remember we're doing coordinated entry right now, so it's a services only project. Think of the prior living situation here as where they're staying at the time you're assessing them. So in this case, they're in your shelter. They're at the Salvation Army Family Shelter. So that's their prior / in this case, current living situation. So emergency shelter. They've been there for, we'll say, 2 to 6 nights. The approximate date this period of homelessness started for this client was July 28th, 2024. Before that, he had been staying with somebody for a week or more. So there was a break in homelessness. So this period, he started staying in his car on July 28th. So that's why we're using that date. And then he had 7 periods of homelessness, including this one in the last 3 years, and those were adding up to more than 12 months. So he'll end up getting flagged as chronically homeless, which that moves the person up to the top of the list where they're then sorted by their score. Health insurance, you can just default that from their shelter entry, unless it's changed, but it probably is not. So I hit default and that pulled it over. I'll hit save. All right, then we get to the financial. I'm going to default that from the shelter. So again, it just pulls it in. You don't have to do it from scratch again unless something has changed. So I'll hit save and close. Barriers should automatically default, and then we're going to say, yep, these are accurate. If there's anything else, go ahead and put a yes in and then put a yes in for indefinite. But we're going to say that's accurate. So I'll hit save and close. Domestic violence, I'll default that because that hasn't changed since the shelter entry. So I'll hit save there. All right, now we get to the actual assessment. So as noted up here, you want to just explain to the client, hey, this is not a judgmental set of questions. We're aiming to capture your experiences here. There's no right or wrong answers. And if anything, reporting something that you might historically have obscured or not reported because of understandably thinking there'd be a stigma attached, go ahead and report that here because that can help you. There's no sort of detail that's asked. It's all just yes or no. All right, so in this case, we're going to say it's in person, the mechanism, that's how you're assessing them. The location is the Salvation Army Peoria. And then we get to the actual question. So the first question, are there any children under 18 that will be living with you in the next 6 months? We're going to say yes, they're with them right now. Even if they were not with them, if they would be with them at least 50% of the time, when they got housed, go ahead and go with a yes there. Even if they said, like if they were, leaning towards no there, but, they had earlier said, yeah, I'm going to have my kid at least 50% of the time, go ahead and direct them to put a yes there. They'll get points for that. We don't want somebody reporting if that's not reporting that if that's not the case, but we kind of use that 50% threshold as the one that determines if they would get put in a family unit or not, and then it also applies to this question. But usually they're gonna be able to answer this without any hesitation. Has anyone close to you ever hurt you or threatened to hurt you? We'll say yes there. And if they have reported domestic violence in their enrollment, and they say no here, just let them know like, hey, that domestic violence does count, even if it happened 20 years ago. And even if they seem a bit confused about that, if you've got reason to believe they've been threatened or physically hurt by someone, or hurt in any way, go ahead and put a yes there. You can do that if the whole assessment, if it's like egregiously off, then reach out to me and we'll do a assessment review request. But if there's like a question here or there where they're underreporting and therefore depriving themselves of points, you have the ability to go ahead and switch that answer on the assessment so that they're getting those points. All right, we'll say that the domestic violence or the threat or the harm is not directly connected to their homelessness. In this case, were you ever in the foster care system, or has your family dealt with the foster care system or Child Protective Services or DCFS in any way? We'll say no there. Have you been experiencing homelessness for over a year? They say yes. Have you ever been diagnosed or struggled with depression, bipolar, PTSD, anxiety, or anything like that? Again, if you know something to be true and they're underreporting, they're saying no there, go ahead and put a yes, because they get points for that. The assessment will soon change. Those questions will probably be going away, but for now, if they do experience any of these conditions, regardless of if they have a diagnosis or not, we definitely want to have a yes there so they're getting points. Have you ever been diagnosed or struggled with a problem with your heart, lungs, stomach, or any other part of your body? We'll say no there. Have you ever struggled with drugs or alcohol? We'll say no there. And by the way, and I'm blanking out right now, but if this client had a yes for chronic health condition and they say no here, I would ask them for clarification, because chances are if they have a chronic health condition, then this should be a yes. And I think if memory serves me correctly, we did have yes for chronic health. So I'm going to go ahead and pop a yes in there for the diagnosed or struggled with problem with your heart, lung, stomach, or any other part of your body. Okay, are you able to do what a doctor recommends for your health, such as get to all medical appointments, afford, store, and take your medications as prescribed, afford and use needed medical equipment? Sometimes clients will say, "Yeah, I'm able to do all that," but when you dig a little bit deeper, they're dependent on the bus to get to appointments. Sometimes they miss the appointments, or they're having trouble getting some medications or storing them, or there's some sort of a barrier. So if there is any sort of a barrier there to them being fully plugged into the medical or mental health or substance use treatment system, then put a no there. They get points for that. See how I moved it up 3 points? So if there is any sort of barrier there, put a no. Next question. Lately, have you been able to sleep somewhere that has electricity and running water? We're going to say that this client is reporting no, because the most of their last few months has been spent in a place not meant for habitation. So if they say no on that, just let it ride, because that speaks to their experience, and you can see they get points for that. But typically, if they've been in a shelter for an extended period, they would say yes there. But just go with whatever they report. Do you currently have activities and hobbies that make you feel happy and fulfilled? We'll put a no there. Sometimes clients will say, yes, I do. And then again, when you dig a bit deeper, they're going to the library to pass time. And a good way to reframe that so that it's clearer to them is just say, hey, do you have bandwidth right now to really get into hobbies and activities, or is your main focus on surviving? If they're saying my main focus is on surviving, then this should be a no, and they get points for that. It's kind of a proxy for mental health. What was your last permanent zip code? If it's any of these, 61482, 61602, 61603, 61605, or 61606, you'll click on that, and then you'll key the zip code in. If it's any other zip code, you'd put none of the above, and then you'll key the zip code in still in that case as well. So here we've got a total of 25 out of 31. If they're scoring 18 to 31, that's a recommendation for permanent supportive housing. If they're scoring at 10 to 17, that's a recommendation for rapid. Rapid rehousing, people can get pulled down from the permanent supportive housing category and considered for rapid. They could also, if they score into permanent, specify that they have a preference for being considered for rapid, and you can just add a note for that in their profile. But most of the time, people will land in one of those categories, and that's what they stick with. You can't be pulled up from rapid into permanent. They'd have to be reassessed. So if you have concerns that they're underreporting across the board, again, let me know, and we'll do a assessment review request. So 25 out of 31, they're chronic. They're going to land relatively high on the list, but there's no way to give somebody a time frame on when they get pulled. So it's really good to once you've assessed them, to let them know, hey, we need to work on other housing avenues. Again, they're in that document that will accompany this video. Income-based housing, which is sometimes under housing authorities. A lot of times it's standalone, where you just apply to the site directly, and then the private market, which is more difficult to navigate due to the high cost of rent, but there are resources out there, limited resources for that as well. So if they score a 1 or higher on this, we're going to put placed on prioritization list, and we'll hit save. All right, and then the current living situation, we will put as emergency shelter, because that's where they're at right now. I'll hit save. And then we get to the kid. There's nothing really to do here except for record the release, which we didn't have to do for their shelter enrollment, but we're going to say he's on his dad's release. releases of information. And then one other thing I neglected to mention, on the head of household, if they're 18 to 24, this did you age out of foster care, go ahead and fill that in. This is the kid, so this has no bearing on anything, so I'm just going to put a no. But if the adult is 18 to 24 and they aged out of foster care services, they were not adopted or returned to a parent or guardian, go ahead and put a yes there, because that can link them with additional voucher resources. And then for the kid, you don't have to do anything for the county or anything. So we'll hit finish. And then I'm going to quickly fill this in for the kid. He's staying with family, has been for a year or longer, and then no. And then if this is the case, you can skip these homeless questions, because he's not homeless. He's just in the household, or I'm sorry, he's in the shelter right now. So we're going to make that more realistic. Sorry, it escaped me. So but we're going to say he came into the shelter 10-11, and then he just came in with his dad. This is his first time. The dad's chronic. All right, so we're going to default the kid's health insurance, hit save, put no for the disabling conditions for the kid in this case. All right, and then CE event for this case, I'm going to put referral to emergency shelter bed opening. It'll have your provider up there, Salvation Army. Put in the family shelter, hit search in this next field, hit Salvation Army, put accepted, and then put 10/14/2024. This is just like a placeholder or data completeness field. It really has no bearing on anything, but if they're in your shelter, just do this. Refer them back to your shelter to say we're just going to keep working with them for case management and such, and until they get pulled or they find other housing. You don't have to do resulting enrollment. It doesn't pull in shelters. So we'll hit save. And then if there's nothing else to add in the case note, just put CE assessment completed and hit save and then hit finish. And so now this household would show up on the by name list. That's for another training, the by name list. But if I go back to their profile, I'm going to refresh it because we're still on the same dashboard. You can scroll down and see there's the CE enrollment. And then if I click on prioritization assessment V2, that's where the assessment landed. And this is the most recent one from 10/14. So that is how you do a coordinated entry intake. Again, please reach out if there are any questions.